वनचारी यमुनातीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यमुनातीरा वनचारी यमुनातीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परम से परिवराज का आचार्य स्तोत्र शत श्रीमद शरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 3, The Birth of Lord Krishna, text 15 to 17. So, I'll recite the text 15 and 16, and then we will see the word by word, and then we'll recite text 17 together. Text 15. यथेमे विकृता भावास्तथा ते विकृतैः सह नानावीर्याः पृथग्भूता विराजं जनयन्ति हि सन्निपत्य समुत्पाद्य दृश्यन्ते नुगता इव प्रागेव विद्यमानत्वान् न तेषामिह सम्भवः। We do the word by word for text 17. एवं भवान् बुद्धि अनुमेय लक्षणैः ग्राह्यैः गुणैः सन्नपि तद्गुण अग्रहः अनावृत्तत्वात् बहि अन्तरं न ते सर्वस्य सर्व आत्मनः आत्मवस्तुनः एवं भवान् बुद्धि अनुमेय लक्षणैर् ग्राह्यैर्गुणैः सन्नपि तद्गुणाग्रहः अनावृतत्वाद् बहिरन्तरं न ते सर्वस्य सर्वात्मन आत्मवस्तुनः एवं भवान् बुद्ध्यनुमेयलक्षणैर्ग्राह्यैर्गुणैः सन्नपि तद्गुणाग्रहः अनावृतत्वाद् बहिरन्तरं न ते सर्वस्य सर्वात्मन आत्मवस्तुनः एवं भवान् बुद्ध्यनुमेयलक्षणैर्ग्राह्यैर्गुणैः सन्नपि तद्गुणाग्रहः अनावृतत्वाद् बहिरन्तरं न ते सर्वस्य सर्वात्मन आत्मवस्तुनः भवान् बुद्ध्यनुमेयलक्षणैः आवृतत्वाद् बहिरन्तरं न ते सर्वस्य सर्वात्मन आत्मवस्तुनः ग्राह्यैर्गुणैः सन्नपि तद्गुणाग्रहः अनावृतत्वाद् बहिरन्तरं न ते सर्वस्य सर्वात्मन आत्मवस्तुनः माताजी सन्नपि तद्गुणः आवृतत्वाद् बहिरन्तरं न ते सर्वात्मन आत्मवस्तुनः We'll read the word to word for all three verses, 15 and 17. Yatha, as, ime, these material creations made of material energy, avikritaha, actually not disintegrated, bhavaha, with such a conception. Similarly, they, vikritaihi saha, association with these different elements coming from the total material energy. Nana viryaha, every element is full of different energies. Prithak, separated. Bhutaha, becoming. Virajam, the whole cosmic manifestation. Janayanti, create. He, indeed. Sannipatya, because of association with the spiritual energy. Samutpadya, after being created. Drishyante, they appear. Anugataha, entered within it. Iva, as if. Prak, from the very beginning, before the creation of this cosmic manifestation. Eva, indeed. Vidyamanatvat, due to the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Na, not. Tesham, of these material elements. Iha, in this matter of creation. Sambhavaha, entering would have been possible. Evam, in this way. Bhavan, O my Lord, Buddhi Anumeya Lakshanaihi, by real intelligence and by such symptoms. Grahyaihi, with the objects of the senses. Gunaihi, with the modes of material nature. Tannapi, although in touch. Tadguna agraha, are not touched by the material qualities. Anavritatvat, because of being situated everywhere. Bahi antaram, within the external and internal. Nate, there is no such thing for you. Sarvasya, of everything. Sarva atmanaha, you are the root of everything. Atmavastunaha, everything belongs to you, but you are outside and inside of everything. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya ISKCON. Translation. The Mahatattva, the total material energy, is undivided, but because of the material modes of nature, it appears to separate into earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Because of the living energy, Jiva Bhuta, these separated energies combine to make the cosmic manifestation visible. But in fact, before the creation of the cosmos, the total energy is already present. Therefore, the total material energy never actually enters the creation. Similarly, although you are perceived by your senses because of your presence, you cannot be perceived by the senses nor experienced by the mind or word. Avana Manasa Gochara. With our senses, we can perceive some things, but not everything. For example, we can use our eyes to see, but not to taste. Consequently, you are beyond perception by the senses. Although in touch with the modes of material nature, you are unaffected by them. You are the prime factor in everything, the all-pervading, undivided supersoul. For you, therefore, there is no external or internal. You never entered the womb of Devaki. Rather, you existed there already. Purport. The same understanding is explained by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 4. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagad avyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavasthitaha. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is not perceivable through the gross material senses. It is said that Lord Sri Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, etc. cannot be understood by material senses. Only to one who is engaged in pure devotional service, under proper guidance, is he revealed. As stated in Brahma Samhita 538, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santas Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. One can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda always, within oneself and outside oneself, if one has developed the transcendental, loving attitude toward him. Thus, for people in general, he is not visible. In the above mentioned verse from Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it is said that although he is all pervading, everywhere present, he is not conceivable by the material senses. But actually, although we cannot see him, everything is resting in him. As discussed in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the entire material cosmic manifestation is only a combination of his two different energies, superior spiritual energy and the inferior material energy. Just as the sunshine is spread all over the universe, the energy of the Lord is spread all over the creation, and everything is resting in that energy. Yet, one should not conclude that because he is spread all over, he has lost his personal existence. To refute such arguments, the Lord says, I am everywhere and everything is in me, but still I am aloof. For example, a king heads a government, which is but the manifestation of the king's energy. The different governmental departments are nothing but the energies of the king, and each department is resting on the king's power. But still one cannot expect the king to be present in every department personally. That is a crude example. Similarly, all the manifestations that we see and everything that exists both in the material world and in the spiritual world, are resting on the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The creation takes place by the diffusion of his different energies, and as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, he is everywhere present by his personal representation, the diffusion of his different energies. One may argue that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who creates the whole cosmic manifestation simply by his glance, cannot come within the womb of Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. To eradicate this argument, Vasudeva said, "My dear Lord, it is not very wonderful that you appeared within the womb of Devaki, for the creation was also made in that way. You were lying in the causal ocean as Mahavishnu, and by breathing, innumerable universes came into existence. Then you entered into each of the universes as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Then again you expanded yourself as Kshirodakshay Vishnu, and entered into the heart of all living entities and entered even within the atoms. Therefore, your entrance into the womb of Devaki is understandable in the same way. You appear to have entered, but you are simultaneously all-pervading. We can understand your entrance and non-entrance from material examples. The total material energy remains intact even after being divided into 16 elements. The material body is nothing but a combination of the 5 gross elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Whenever there is a material body, it appears that such elements are newly created, but actually the elements are always existing outside of the body. Similarly, although you appear as a child in the womb of Devaki, you are also existing outside. You are always in your abode, but still you can simultaneously expand yourself into millions of forms. One has to understand your appearance with great intelligence because the material energy is also emanating from you. You are the original source of the material energy, just as the sun is the source of the sunshine. The sunshine cannot cover the sun globe, nor can the material energy, being an emanation from you, cover you. You appear to be in the 3 modes of material energy, but actually the 3 modes of material energy cannot cover you. This is understood by the highly intellectual philosophers. In other words, although you appear to be within the material energy, you are never covered by it. We hear from the Vedic version that the Supreme Brahman exhibits his effulgence and therefore everything is illuminated. We can understand from Brahma Samhita that the Brahma Jyoti or the Brahman effulgence emanates from the body of the Supreme Lord. And from the Brahman effulgence, all creation takes place. It is further stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is the support of the Brahman effulgence. Originally, he is the root cause of everything. But persons who are less intelligent think that when the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes within this material world, he accepts material qualities. Such conclusions are not mature, but are made by the less intelligent. Sorry, the translation again. The Mahatattva, the total material energy, is undivided, but because of the material modes of nature, it appears to separate into earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Because of the living energy, Jiva Bhuta, these separated energies combine to make the cosmic manifestation visible, but in fact, before the creation of the cosmos, the total energy is already present. Therefore, the total material energy never actually enters the creation. Similarly, although you are perceived by our senses because of your presence, you cannot be perceived by the senses, nor experienced by the mind or words, avan manasa gochara. With our senses, we can perceive some things, but not everything. For example, we can use our eyes to see, but not to taste. Consequently, we are beyond perception by the senses. Although in touch with the modes of material nature, you are unaffected by them. You are the prime factor in everything, the all-pervading, undivided supersoul. For you, therefore, there is no external or internal. You never entered the womb of Devaki, rather you existed there already. So we are continuing our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam with prayers by Vasudeva. In this chapter, the birth of Lord Krishna is described, and the prayers of Vasudeva as well as the prayers of Devaki also will be discussed in future verses. And then after that, Krishna will be transferred to Vrindavan, to Mother Yashoda. So if you see this verse, or rather I'll just go back a little bit and I'll read the translation of text 13 and 14 as well. So here, this 13th is the text where Vasudeva starts his prayer. And he says, "My Lord, you are the supreme person beyond material existence, and you are the super soul. Your form can be perceived by transcendental knowledge, by which you can be understood as the supreme personality of Godhead. I now understand your position perfectly." In text 14 says, "My Lord, you are the same person who in the beginning created this material world by his personal external energy. After the creation of this world of three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, you appear to have entered it, although in fact you have not." And then we discuss today's verse. So if we see, and in text, just to go back a little bit more. In text 10, the beautiful transcendental form of the Lord is described. The translation goes, "Vasudeva then saw the newborn child who had very wonderful lotus-like eyes, and who bore in his four hands the four weapons, Shankha, Chakra, Gada, and Padma. On his chest was the mark of Srivatsa, and on his neck the brilliant Kaustuba gem. Dressed in yellow, his body blackish, like a dense cloud, his scattered hair fully grown, and his helmet and earrings sparkling uncommonly with valuable gem Vaidurya. The child, decorated with a brilliant belt, armlets, bangles, and other ornaments, appeared very wonderful." So this was the form which Vasudeva saw, right? And it describes the transcendental form of the Lord, how his beauty is, what all ornaments are adorned by him in his transcendental body, the hue, the blackish hue of his body, his hair, his helmets, his sparkling earrings, and all those things are mentioned. But the prayers which Vasudeva offers to the Lord primarily speaks about the Lord's association with his material energy, or the Lord's creation pastimes. Okay, so this is instructive to us that, and we see this in several of the prayers by the devotees. In Srimad Bhagavatam itself, we can see that whenever the prayers start, they speak about the transcendental nature of the Lord in comparison to the material realm. How he is beyond the three modes of material nature, how he creates this material universe. In fact, if you see, all the Puranas and Dharma Shastras also, they start with explanation of the creation by the Lord, and then they expound on the glories of the Lord. So even in Srimad Bhagavatam, we see in the first canto, the third chapter speaks about the creation of the Lord. Of course, it's one of the features of the Mahapuranas that creation, Sarga and Visarga, must be discussed. So it's instructive in the sense that before the transcendental form or the pastimes of the Lord can be discussed, we have to understand the Lord's glories by discussing his creation pastimes, his pastimes of creating this material world. And this was, this actually I would like to read this from, it's the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 2, Chapter 4 and Text 6, 2.4.6. There, Srila Prabhupada writes, "Maharaj Parikshit did not ask his spiritual master Shukdev Goswami to narrate Lord Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He wanted to hear first about the creation of the Lord. Shukdev Goswami did not say that the king should hear about the direct transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The time was very short, right? Parikshit Maharaj had only 7 days to live. And naturally, Shukdev Goswami could have gone directly to the 10th canto to make a shortcut of the whole thing, as generally done by the professional reciters. But neither the king, Maharaj Parikshit, nor the great speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam jumped up like the organizers of Bhagavatam. Both of them proceeded systematically so that both future readers and hearers might take lessons from the example of the procedure of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are under the control of the external energy of the Lord, or in other words, those who are in the material world, must first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality. And afterwards, one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy. So I'm just skipping few lines. Therefore, the neophyte devotee, instead of jumping at once to the platform of transcendental pastimes presented by the internal energy of the Lord, may know how great the Supreme Lord is by inquiring about the process of his creative energy. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, descriptions of the creative energy and the Lord's hand in it are explained, and the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita has warned the neophyte devotees to be seriously on guard against the pitfall of neglecting knowledge about Krishna in regard to how great he is. Means that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, he writes that we should not neglect this knowledge of creation of this material world, because that gives an idea to us, or rather it glorifies the Lord and makes us understand of how great he is. Only when one knows Lord Krishna's greatness can one firmly put one's unflinching faith in him. Otherwise, like the common man, even the great leaders of men will mistake Lord Krishna for one of the many demigods, or a historical personality, or a myth only. The transcendental pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan or even at Dwaraka are relishable for persons who have already qualified themselves in advanced spiritual techniques, and the common man may be able to attain to such a plane by this gradual process of service and inquiries, as we shall see in the behavior of Maharaj Parikshit. This is Srila Prabhupada writing in this purport in 2nd Canto, chapter 6, or chapter 4, text 6. And very clearly he mentions that we should not jump into the transcendental pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan or at Dwaraka, because these are relishable only by those who have already qualified themselves in spiritual techniques. And this is reflective in the verse that we are discussing today. And as mentioned in the prayers also, we are discussing 10th canto. So it's said that after one finishes the 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, then one is purified to see the lotus face of the Lord. The 10th canto is considered as the face of the Lord. And within this itself, there are so many philosophical points that are discussed, so many siddhantics, so many darshanas. Not so many darshanas, but details of the siddhanta is discussed in the 10th canto as well. So we'll see here in this translation, Vasudev is speaking about this Mahatattva, the total material energy, and he's saying how it's undivided, but because of material modes of nature, it appears to separate into earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Now speaking about creation. So it gives us an idea that we have to discuss about the creation pastimes, well, and then we can gradually understand the pastimes of the Lord. And if you see the purport that Srila Prabhupada writes for this 3 texts, 15, 16 and 17, here also he is not explaining about the transcendental form of the Lord, but then he is explaining the transcendental position of the Lord with respect to this material creation, and also with respect to the 3 modes of material nature. So we need to have a clear understanding of how this creation takes place, and that way we'll be able to appreciate how the Lord is transcendental to this creation. There are so many misconceptions that people have, and that's primarily, and one of the reasons of that is because people do not know how this material world came into being. And this is common even amongst those who claim themselves to be Hindus. So in the last few days, I came in contact with several people who are proponents of this Hindutva or this Sanatana Dharma. We should not speak politics here, but then with this government, the present government, then there's a way where people are more, they want to go back to the roots, so to speak, or they want to establish this process of Sanatana Dharma. They call themselves Sanatana Dharmi or the followers of Hindutva, like that. So when we were discussing this, they still have several misconceptions. They have lots of misconceptions actually. So this stems misconceptions in the means not understanding, or they say basically that these scriptures are not eternal, but these scriptures have been written by great sages who had more intelligence than us, were more qualified than us, who had this mystic potencies and things like that. So these scriptures were written by them, and this is not something which is revealed by the Supreme Lord, because they do not have the idea of the Supreme Lord. So these scriptures were being written by them, and they had a conception of the creation of this world. But then, with respect to the modern science, the creation of this world happens according to the Big Bang. And this is the Hindutva people who are speaking like this. So they do not have an understanding. So to cut the long story short, I'll not get into lots of details of this Hindutva. The point is that people, although they tend or they try to follow this Vedic culture or Sanatana Dharma, but unless and until they have an understanding of the creation of the Lord, they will not have a conception of who the Supreme Lord is. Okay, only when we know how the creation happened, then only we can understand the greatness of the Creator as well. So we who are in this material world, who are the condition, we are the conditioned being here. Being in this material world, we do not have the qualification to understand that which is beyond us. Okay, so it must be revealed to us, it must be taught to us, and that process starts with the understanding of how this creation happens. And that's why I said that when the Shastras were provided, when Puranas, each of the Puranas in Dharma Shastras, they start with explanation of the creation of the Lord, how the Lord creates. And here also, when Vasudeva is praying to the Lord, he refers back to the creation of the Lord. Okay, so in this specific verse, he is giving a comparison of how the creation happens and how the Lord's appearance also is similar to his creation. So we will get to that, but just before that, I thought we'll recap how this material world was created. This we discussed elaborately when we were discussing Canto 2 and Canto 3, which may be quite some years back. So in Canto 2, it specifically mentioned this, when Narad Muni is discussing with Lord Brahma, and when Kapil Dev is instructing in Canto 3 to Mother Devahuti, this creation aspects are elaborately mentioned. So this Mahatattva, which is mentioned as the total material energy, this is formed by, or this is formed through this Pradhana. Srila Prabhupada writes about the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Kshirodaksha Vishnu and Mahavishnu here, and how Vasudeva is praying to the Lord that just like Mahavishnu creates this universe and Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters into it, and then Kshirodaksha Vishnu enters into each of this universe, into each and every atom. Similarly, also entered the womb of Devaki. So the Lord has two energies basically. There is this material energy and spiritual energy. The Lord has infinite amount of energies, but categorized into basically these two, material and spiritual energy. And material energy is also eternal. It is not temporary. The manifestations of the material energy are temporary. So there is change. There is what's mentioned is Vikrita. Vikrita, this Avikrita and Vikrita. It's mentioned text 15. So there is this unmanifestation and then there is manifestation. So this Pradhana, this material energy of the Lord is very, very sukshma, very, very subtle, which cannot be perceived by the senses because it itself contains all the ingredients of the senses. So this Pradhana is the total material energy of the Lord. And when Mahavishnu glances or when he desires to make this creation, to create, to manifest this material world, then he glances into this Pradhana, and then the Pradhana, and this glance contains the time, the Kala Shakti of the Lord. So this, by this Kala Shakti, this Pradhana then gets transformed into Mahatattva, which is the total material energy. It is still undivided, but because of the material modes of nature, it appears to separate into earth, water, fire, air and ether. So this total material energy, it contains the elements and it also contains the three modes. And these three modes are activated by the Kala Shakti of the Lord. And after it's activated, then the universes can come out from the pores of Lord Mahavishnu, from Karanadaksha Vishnu. And then this Mahatattva, it manifests these elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then it envelopes this universe. There are so many universes that are created, it manifests the individual universes. But one thing that we have to understand is, although this Pradhana gets transformed into Mahatattva, and then Mahatattva then disintegrates or it expands, the varieties are manifested, the form of earth, water, fire, air, ether, like this, but still the Pradhana exists. Okay, it's not that because the metal energy is taken from there, then the metal energy is vanquished. It still remains there. So as Lord Mahavishnu breathes out and breathes in, the metal energy remains, and only a portion of it, that metal energy, envelopes the universes, and then everything happens within the universe. And then after the universe, when Mahavishnu breathes in, the universe is annihilated, and the same metal energy goes into the original reservoir of material energy. So this is what happens. Okay, and after this is created, then these modes of material nature are there, and initially this for the creation of this material world, the living entity has to forget his constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. So the first thing that acts, or the first guna which is manifest, is this tamoguna. So Mahatattva, although is primarily said to be in Sattva-guna, okay, it's discussed in the second and third canto, but from Mahatattva comes, again, it's further divided into Sattva-guna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna, and from this Tamoguna, rest of the creation takes place, which is then further described as Dravya, Jnana, Kriya, and then Adhibhuta, Adhyatma and Adhideva, like that. Several concepts are mentioned. So it's also important for us to understand these different things, although I wanted to discuss that, but then we may not have time to discuss all these things. But I would suggest that please go back, go to Canto 2, go to Canto 3, and try to understand these the creation pastimes of the Lord. It actually, when I was preparing or when I was reading for this class, then when I went through, it really it gives a transformative experience, in the sense that it gives the magnificence, it enlightens us with the magnificence of the Lord, with the greatness of the Lord, or how great He is. This creation that we see around us is just a spark of dust. Okay, and then this is whole universe, which is then explained in Canto 5. And then there are millions and trillions of universes, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. It's just like a mustard seed in a bag of mustard seeds. And how can we count the number of mustard seeds in a bag of mustard seeds? So those many universes are there. And all of these universes are maintained just by one Amsha of the Lord. So that shows the greatness of the Lord. And that great Lord, the Supreme Absolute Truth, He then agrees to enter into the womb of Mother Devaki. And Vasudeva says here, just like the total material energy, although it seems that it is dividing, it is manifesting earth, water, air, fire, ether, then it also manifests the different senses, the sense objects, the knowledge acquiring senses, working senses. All these things are there. We have the sense of sound. These are sense objects: sound, touch, taste, smell, form. Then we have this knowledge acquiring senses: eyes, ears, nose, skin, then tongue. Then working senses, we have these hands, speech, then legs, genitals and anus. So totally, there are totally 20 sense objects, and all of them, these are totally 20 manifestations which come from Mahatattva. So variegatedness is manifested through Mahatattva, but still, although it is there and it existed before the creation. Okay, so I'll just read the translation again to make it clear. Because of the Mahatattva, the total material energy is undivided, but because of the material modes of nature, it appears to separate into earth, water, fire, air and ether. Because of the living energy, Jiva Bhuta, these separated energies combine to make the cosmic manifestation visible. So, when it was in Mahatattva stage, when it was in Pradhana stage, it was in unmanifested stage. Then the varieties appeared. because of the three modes of material nature. And when the universe has to be populated, the creation has to be done within this universe, the Visarga has to be done, then again these material elements combine to form different varieties. Everything that we see around us, it's made up of these 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air and ether. Our bodies are also made up of these 5 elements. And even the tanmatras, these sense objects like smell, touch, taste, these are also made up of the ingredients from Mahatattva only. So what we basically are doing within this material world is the matter is interacting with matter. And that's about it. It's only a matter's interaction with matter. So when we speak or when people are engaged in sense gratification, what they're actually doing is they're combining material energy with material energy. So that does not give any taste, because material energy by its constitution is not conscious. It is not the state of Satchit Ananda. The material energy is not a state of Satchit Ananda. The spiritual energy is the state of Sat, Chit and Ananda. So when we try to enjoy our senses, when we try to do sense gratification, we are basically combining the material energy with material energy. We are combining our senses with the sense objects. We have a knowledge acquiring senses. We are combining that with the sense objects of smell, touch, taste, form and hearing, sound. So this is the only thing that's happening. So therefore, there's no point in sense gratification. So this is what we should understand. Now, what the Vasudeva's point here is, there is unmanifestation before creation, then this manifestation of these different elements from Mahatattva, and then again they combine. And although they have combined here, we cannot say the total material energy has it has vanquished, or it has reduced, or it has reduced in quantity, or it has completely disappeared. So that's what Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, the total material energy never actually enters the creation. Just like the variegatedness is there, but the totality of the material energy always remains outside of the creation. So when it always remains outside the creation, in one sense we can say that it never enters, although it has entered. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Absolute Truth in his spiritual realm, although he has entered the womb of Devaki, actually in one sense he has not, because he always retains his eternal transcendental position. He never diminishes in his qualification, he never diminishes in his name, fame, form, and his pastimes are of the same transcendental level as they are in the spiritual world. Vasudeva says that although it appears that you have entered the womb of Devaki, although from a mundane point of view one might say that because the Lord has entered the womb of Devaki, therefore his qualities or his position, his transcendental position has been compromised, his transcendental position has diminished. But it is not so. The transcendental position of the Lord always remains, and he always is above these modes of material nature. And because he is all pervading. Now another example which can be derived from this is, say when husband and wife, they want to conceive a child, then the husband, he enters in the form of semen into his wife, and then the child is born, or the body is developed. Okay, but in the initial stage, in the womb of the mother, the child does not have all the ingredients of his body's development. Ingredients are there, but the body is not developed. In the sense, these elements, earth, water, fire, and air and ether, these elements are what is required to develop the body. But in the initial stages, in the first and second day after conception, then the body is still not created. And the ingredients of this body are then derived from this external world, from this material nature, from the mother. So mother provides these ingredients, earth, water, fire, air and ether, to the child. Okay, and the child's body develops. And then after the child's body develops, then the child's body is also constituted of this earth, water, fire, air and ether. So these ingredients were present before outside. These ingredients are present outside the mother's womb, means the surroundings. These ingredients are what the mother's body is made up of. These ingredients what enters inside the womb of the mother, and then these ingredients create another new body. Okay, so what is happening actually is only transformation of this material energy, or the ingredients of this material energy. There's nothing else that's happening. So although it is outside of the mother, it also enters inside the mother, and it carries out its same task. Similarly, the Lord is in a transcendental position outside of this material realm in the spiritual world. Okay, he performs his spiritual pastime. He has a transcendental body, Satchijananda Vigraha. And then when he enters within this material world, it is similar to the development of the child's body. Although these material ingredients are there outside the mother's body, but it also manifests inside the mother's womb. Similarly, the Lord's pastimes are transcendental in his eternal abode. He is performing those pastimes. But when he enters the womb of this material world, still his pastimes remain transcendental only. So this is the Upma, or this is the example or comparison which Vasudeva gives in this particular verse. That all the Mahatattva is there, then it enters within this universe. And then it creates so much varieties. But still the totality of this Mahatattva remains outside. Similarly, in comparison to the mother, the elements are present outside, then the mother is creating the body within herself, and all the elements, they retain their same nature outside of the mother's body and also within the womb of the mother's body. Similarly, when the Lord enters the womb of Devaki, or when the Lord enters into this material world, then also his transcendental position is always maintained, just like the position of these material elements are always maintained. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada at the end of this purport, sorry, not at the end of this purport, he writes here that we can understand your entrance and non-entrance from material examples. Srila Prabhupada writes here, taking the position of Vasudeva, like Vasudeva is praying to the Lord, and then he's praying to the Lord that we can understand your entrance and non-entrance from material examples. These are the examples that he is giving. Okay, that although the Lord enters into this material world, he is transcendental to it. And Srila Prabhupada at the start of his purport itself, he explains this point by quoting this verse from Bhagavad Gita 9.4. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina masthani sarvabhutani chaham teshvavastitah. By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So he has entered Avyakta Murtina, Jagat Avyakta Murtina. He enters into this universe in his Avyakta Murti, in his unmanifested form. And this unmanifested form is further explained. Srila Prabhupada explains that those who are contaminated by the modes of material nature, they cannot perceive this unmanifested form of the Lord. And to perceive the unmanifested form of the Lord, one must have this transcendental eyes anointed with the salve of love. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. When that is there, when a pure devotee has this transcendental vision, then he can see the unmanifested form of the Lord as well as the manifested form of the Lord. But if a person does not have devotion, that even if the Lord is manifest in front of him, still he will not be able to perceive the form of the Lord, or still he cannot understand the transcendental nature of the Lord. So, the Lord is pervading this entire universe, and he says all beings are in me, which basically means that he's just like the mother. That all beings are in him, just like the mother has a child within her womb. Similarly, the Lord has the entire universe or the entire material creation within him. In fact, the whole spiritual creation as well as material creation is within the purview of the Supreme Lord. But I am not in them. And then he says, although everything is within me, but I am not in them. But although he is not in them, he still enters into this material realm to manifest his pastimes. So this is the inconceivability of the Lord's position. Everything is existing in him. Okay, everything is existing in him, and then he says, I am not in them. But then still he enters into this material creation. Still he performs his pastimes in the spiritual world also, and then he is there as a person. These are the two contradictory nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One is his personality. As a person, he acts just like a human being. He acts just like a normal living entity who is within the purview of this energy. Okay, this either material energy or spiritual energy, specifically material energy. Although he appears in his personality within this material energy, but still in his unmanifested form, he is the one who is sustaining both the spiritual realm as well as the material realm. So this is possible only for the Supreme Personality, this is possible only by the Supreme Personality of God. It's not possible for any other living entity, because we are always under the control of one of the energies of the Lord. So this point can be understood, as I said, if we understand how the creation happens, and how we understand that when the Lord enters, Mahavishnu is there outside, but then he expands and he enters as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And as Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he manifests the universal form. Okay, and only on the template of the universal form, then this entire creation happens. So this is also very interesting to understand, because Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he manifests the universal form. That is the template, and on that template only all the material ingredients are architected by the Lord Brahma, and then the material world is manifested that way. But still, although it is so, but Garbhodaksha Vishnu is not contaminated, although he is manifesting the universal form. And the universal form is an imaginary form of the Lord. It's the material form of the Lord. It's also called as the material form of the Lord, but still he, as the super soul of that particular material form of the Lord, which is manifested from his body itself, always remains transcendental. He is not contaminated by the universal form of the Lord also. These may seem a bit technical, but then that's why I suggested that if we read Canto 2 and Canto 3, specifically this creation pastimes, it gives us an idea of how glorious the Lord is and how he's completely opposed. I'll not say opposed, but then completely different from us. Okay, so normally when people speak of Krishna, there's so much debate always goes on. But no, he was just a politician. He was like this. He was like that. He was a. I also read somewhere that Krishna, he was a tribal man. He was roaming around here and there. And then as the age progressed, then some influential writers came, and because these influential writers, they were mesmerized by the activities that Krishna performed. Therefore, they deified him, which basically means that they made him into a deity. And then it was further incorporated in different Puranas like Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, and then finally it was conclusively established in Srimad Bhagavatam like that. That's why if you see, whenever you do Google search or if you speak to any so-called scholar of this Vedic literature, he'll always date the Vedic scriptures. He says Rig Veda 3500 BC. Then after that came this Yajurveda, then Samaveda was the last, and the Puranas were created somewhere around 2000 BC like this. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the latest creation. It was not written by Vyasadeva, but someone called as Vopadev. So when these arguments are put forward, okay, these arguments are put forward where Krishna is, he's considered to be a normal person, but then over a period of time, by mere conjecture or by mere speculation, he has been qualified as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's why people are following it like this. But one thing which completely beats them, or which completely negates this, is the actual transcendental position that the devotees gain by performing devotion service to Krishna. So Krishna says in the 9th chapter, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitramidam Uttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartam Avyayam. So if Krishna is only a deified deity or a person who has been modified by speculation, conjecture over a period of time into a deity, then devotional service onto him should not produce any result. But then there have been years and years, thousands and thousands and thousands and years of great devotees who, by performing devotional service to the Lord, have manifested these transcendental qualities within them, who have experienced that bliss, who are able to impart that bliss to their disciples also, who gives, even when we do devotional service, we chant our rounds or we take part in Kirtan, there's a sense of bliss which cannot be experienced with anything that is material. You can see, there are so many stories where people or devotees who are performing devotional service, even if they want to go out of devotional service, they are not able to. They're snatched back. They cannot get that relish or that taste in this material realm. Okay, because they have tasted the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. So this basically defeats the entire narrative of these people who say that Krishna was not Krishna was deified into a deity like this. But then this is what you should understand. And as I was speaking about this people, Hindutva people and others, so when they say they are not able to reconcile the explanations in the Puranas with the modern science, so they also speak of Big Bang as if it is something which actually really happened. And then they also see, these are the great rishis who came, and Krishna was also there, but then he was also a normal human being, but he was on a very high platform. So there was something which I heard maybe 2-3 years back, where they say that based on different yogic level, a normal person has enlightened himself to around to a level of 5 to 6. I don't know what they call it, to around 5 or 6. And then those who are great scientists like Einstein, this, that, and all, who are more intellectual or who can see things which a normal person cannot see, they have attained the level of say 8 or 9, like this. And then there are these great yogic mystics also, who by doing yoga practices and all, who attain this mystic power, and they are on the level of 12. And those whom these Hindus call as Bhagavan, like Lord Rama and Lord Krishna, they are on the highest level of 16. Like that. Okay, I'm sorry because I heard this long time back, but then this is the kind of classification that people give. And this I heard from a person who's actually a spiritual mentor and is giving this class, this so-called class, to around 5,000, 6,000 people. Completely speculation. But then he's speaking it as if he knows everything properly. And then he's bringing this to the point that if one can reach to the level of that 15 or 16 level, then one can actually become Krishna. Okay, so this Hindu thought process is basically leading one to a position of atheism and impersonalism. That's where it's leading a person to. So, and they claim, this Hindutva people or this Sanatana Dharma, I should not speak much about it, but still, no, because we are here. So they speak about this karma yoga, this karma practice, that we have to do our karma. And if we do our karma, then we can maintain our process of Hinduism and things like that. But this is only going to lead them further down. If we do not understand the position of the Lord, then there's no point in doing karma, because that's only going to give you reactions. Karma makes sense only when it's understood that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then activities are done for serving Him as an offering onto Him. If karma is done, or we say, oh, we are karma yogis, even during Prabhupada's time, when people used to come to him, then they will say, oh, Swamiji, we are karma yogis, we do our activities. But then there's no proper understanding of what karma yoga is, because they do not accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Karma yoga will make sense only when one understands that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and we are supposed to do activities as an offering onto Him. But if it is not done in that manner, one may be following his Varna and Ashrama duties, but if he does not know, does not understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and he is supposed to make offerings of his activities or the result of his activities to the Lord, then his karma is not actually yoga. It's only going to lead him. It's only sinful activity. Anything which is done without an offering to the Lord, it's a sinful activity, and that leads to a downfall into this material realm. So forget about attaining a higher position, the position, whatever the 16, 17 they call, but one cannot even stop himself from undergoing this process of repeated birth and death, because his whole understanding is convoluted, is corrupted. Okay. So that Srila Prabhupada also writes here that yeah, he writes here. One has to understand your appearance with great intelligence, because the metal energy is also emanating from you. You are the original source of the metal energy, just as the sun is the source of the sunshine. The sunshine cannot cover the sun globe, nor can the material energy, being an emanation from you, cover you. You appear to be in the three modes of metal nature, but actually the three modes of metal nature cannot cover you. This is understood by the highly intellectual philosophers. In other words, although you appear to be within the metal energy, you are never covered by it. So this position, this transcendental position of the Lord, can be understood only by highly intellectual philosophers. It cannot be understood by anything else. And we should be actually thankful to Krishna for speaking the Bhagavad Gita. Normally we say that Srila Prabhupada is great or glorious because he gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is, and through which one can understand Bhagavad Gita as it is to be understood. But just by speaking specific verses from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has made Krishna consciousness very straightforward and simple. Okay, although there are so many commentaries on Bhagavad Gita and they're kind of convoluted, but the verses of Bhagavad Gita itself are so direct and so clear that if the meaning is taken directly, or one who understands how a Vedic scripture should be understood, or how it should be analyzed and understood, how it should be read, one cannot but become a Krishna conscious person. This is also there. There are so many verses in 7th chapter and 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we can read that also and try. Not the IQ level, but it is something to do with, I don't remember actually at all. But then this point seemed relevant to the context of what I am speaking. But there are people who speak like this. Maybe it's something to do this elevating oneself to the levels of chakra or something. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Prabhupada ki.